Hello friends, welcome to Total Recaps. Today we are going to explain a movie named Dangal, released in 2016. This film is inspired by real heroes of India, Mahavir Singh Phogat, and his two daughters, Geeta and Babita. So sit with popcorns and enjoy this sports/action movie. The main character of the film, Mahavir Singh Phogat, was a former Indian national level wrestler. However, due to financial constraints at home, he had to give up wrestling and is now stuck in a 9-to-5 job. The movie begins in 1988 in the village of Balali, Haryana, India. Mahavir Singh Phogat is seen watching the 1988 Seoul Olympics in his office. At that moment, the former state-level wrestling champion Harkinder comes to his office, and a heated discussion ensues as they watch a match. As a result, Harkinder challenges Mahavir Singh to a small wrestling match. Unaware that Mahavir Singh was a national-level champion, Harkinder is quite confident that he can defeat him. However, within the first 10 seconds of the fight starting, Mahavir lifts and slams Harkinder to the ground. Mahavir then invites Harkinder to play a second round, but even in the second round, Harkinder faces defeat. Eventually, they have their final round, in which Mahavir Singh once again overpowers him. After the match concludes, Mahavir reveals to Harkinder that he was a national-level champion. Following this, Mahavir Singh's past is shown, where he is competing in the final match of the National Wrestling Championship and wins the gold medal. In his career, he earned fame and respect, not just money, but eventually had to take up a job due to financial reasons. Although Mahavir has left wrestling for many years, his dream of winning a gold medal for his country is still unfulfilled. He wants to prepare his future generation for wrestling and fulfill his dream. However, when his pregnant wife Daya gives birth, it's not a son but a daughter. This leaves Mahavir disappointed, as he had hoped for a son. Some people from their village even suggest remedies to ensure the birth of a son. The following year, Daya becomes pregnant again, but once again, she gives birth to a daughter. The villagers blame Mahavir and his wife for this. Despite the circumstances, Mahavir and his wife try 2 more times for a son, but each time, they have daughters. Due to which Mahavir turned his back on both the boy's hope and his dream, and he locked his medals and other awards hanging on the wall in a trunk. Due to having 4 daughters, people start mocking Mahavir. However, one day, when Mahavir returns home from work, he finds some villagers at his house with their 2 sons. They complain that Geeta and Babita, his daughters, have beaten their sons. Geeta was Mahavir Singh's eldest daughter, and her younger sister's name was Babita. Mahavir is surprised to see the condition of the boys and even more shocked that his daughters have beaten them. Anyway, he apologizes to the villagers. Here, instead of scolding his daughters, Mahavir asks them how they managed to beat those boys. Following this, Geeta and Babita explain how they defeated the boys with the help of Omkar, their uncle's son, and even demonstrate the moves they used. Seeing this, Mahavir was quite happy, and his hope was rekindled that he could fulfill his unfinished dream of winning an international gold medal, as his daughters has a natural talent for wrestling. That same night, Mahavir tells his wife Daya, "Until now, I used to think that I would have a son who would bring a gold medal in wrestling for India, but it never occurred to me that gold is gold, whether won by a son or a daughter." Afterwards, he says to Daya, "I want to train my daughters to play wrestling." However, upon considering the society they lived in, Daya responds, "Wrestling is something only boys do. What will the villagers say about us?" Because where these two were living, it was considered very disrespectful for girls to do anything other than doing household chores. However, Mahavir answers all these questions by saying, "Just give me 1 year. If our daughters make progress, they will bring a gold medal for India, and if they don't learn anything, then I won't even take the name of a gold medal for the rest of my life." The next morning, Mahavir wakes up Geeta and Babita at 5 a.m. and asks them to eat pani puri, which is the most famous street food in India and also their favorite. At first, the girls were quite confused by all this, but when they realize that this is going to be their last day of eat any oily and spicy food, they eat pani puri to their heart's content. From the next day onward, they had to follow a strict wrestler's diet and strict training just like true wrestlers. On the first day of their training, both girls runs a lot, but they complains that they can't run as fast in her daily clothes. Following this, Mahavir turns his nephew Omkar's full pants into shorts and also gives Geeta and Babita some of Omkar's old t-shirts. The next day, when they set out for their run, some villagers were watching them in an odd manner. Afterward, for several days, Mahavir makes Geeta and Babita practice the basics. But one day, he takes them to his village's wrestling playground to fight with boys. However, the owner of that playground refuses to let Mahavir join their playground. As a result, Mahavir creates his own playground in his fields, where he teaches his daughters some wrestling basics. A few days later, he realizes that his daughters will need to compete against boys to face real challenges, otherwise, they won't improve. Therefore, he decides to choose his nephew Omkar to fight with his daughters. When Omkar comes to the playground, he defeats Geeta and Babita in the very first minute. The same thing happens the next day, and the day after. Seeing this, Mahavir Phogat realizes that his daughters need protein for strength, which they can't get from milk, almonds, and what they have now. Therefore, he decides to feed his daughters and Omkar chicken, even though he himself was a vegetarian and wouldn't even touch non-vegetarian items. Afterwards, Mahavir goes to a meat shop, where he strikes a deal with the butcher to provide him chicken at a discounted price, and in return, when his daughters become famous, they will promote his shop. But now both girls were tired of the daily strict diet and training, so they complained to their father that their studies and hair were being negatively affected by the training. In response, Mahavir says, "You'll gradually get used to studying, but this hair problem is truly serious." Hearing this, both girls become happy, thinking that their training will be cancelled now. However, the next morning, Mahavir calls the barber to their house and has both of their hair cut. In the meantime, the girls also request not to have their hair cut, but Mahavir doesn't listen to them. As a result, when they go to school, the villagers start laughing at them. Now, Geeta and Babita, frustrated by their father's strictness, that's why they intentionally lose to Omkar in training. Sometimes, to skip the evening training, they throw water on the light bulb to blow the fuse. Apart from this, there are days when Geeta pretends to injure her foot to get a break from training, and sometimes it's Babita. In fact, one day, they even decided to skip training to attend their friend's wedding. However, when they see both of them and Omkar dancing, Mahavir arrives and gives Omkar a strong slap because he couldn't physically harm his daughters. On that day, the two sisters, Omkar, and the bride sit in a room where Geeta and Babita say, "Was it necessary to create such a descent just to skip training for a day?" But the 14-year-old bride sitting in front of them slaps them with her words, as her marriage was being forcefully arranged by her father. Due to this, she compares her situation with Geeta and Babita's situation and then asks both of them, "Whose parents are better? In a society where my parents are considered a burden and they rush to get me married, your father Mahavir is actually thinking about your future." Upon hearing this, the two sisters eventually realize that even though their father making them to strict training, ultimately, all of it is for their own benefit. Hence, the next day, without Mahavir even waking them up, both sisters head to the practice ground in their fields. Mahavir was quite surprised by this. Afterward, both sisters put in a lot of hard work, and eventually, Geeta managed to defeat Omkar. Following this, Geeta's father goes to a local wrestling competition to find a strong competitor, but as soon as the organizers of the competition knows that Mahavir has brought his daughter to compete against a boy, they tell him that this is a sin. But then, the competition organizer friend suggests an idea that in our village, there has never been a match between a boy and a girl. If this happens in our competition, it will attract a lot of audience, and they can earn a lot of money. After that, a day is fixed for the match, and on that day, a lot of people indeed come to watch Geeta's match, thinking that the girl will lose within a few seconds. Then she had to choose her opponent from 4 boys. She selects the strongest boy here. Now the audience thought that the girl might break some bone of her body before she go home. But as the match begins, there is a tough competition between Geeta and the boy. This made people think in the middle of the match that Geeta might win against that boy. Although she eventually loses, she gains prize money and more respect from the audience than her opponent. That same night, Geeta couldn't sleep properly, she continuously recalling her lost match. After that, she goes to her father Mahavir and asks, "Dad, when are we playing the next match?" Following this, Geeta goes on the next day to wrestle with another strong boy, where this time she defeats the boy. Afterward, she participates in several matches, each time selecting stronger opponents than herself and emerging victorious. This leads to her popularity growing in the village, and the man who owns the meat shop starts using Geeta's name along with Mahavir's due to their promise, and he starts earning even more money than before. Now, where once Mahavir's medals hung, the wall was full with Geeta's awards and trophies. Here, Mahavir had realized that his daughter was now ready for the junior nationals. As a result, he starts explaining the various rules of national-level wrestling to her. He even quits his job and returns to farming to invest more time in his daughter's practice. With the help of sleeping mats, Mahavir sets up a wrestling mat at home. After some training sessions, Geeta applies for the junior nationals. Despite being in the underweight category, she competes against heavier opponents and wins the junior nationals finals. From then on, Geeta never looks back, and time flies by rapidly. She advances from junior to senior level and even wins a gold medal in the senior national championship. This becomes a golden chance for her to compete internationally. When Geeta returns home after winning the national wrestling finals, the same people who used to mock Mahavir are now praising him. After winning the nationals, Geeta had to go to the National Sports Academy in Patiala, run by the government, for her training at the international level. Here, Mahavir could no longer train her. The coach there, named Pramod, did not please Mahavir at all. He was arrogant and believed that his way was absolutely correct. He dismissed any techniques or lessons that the girls had learned from their previous coach as useless. Seeing this, Mahavir Singh returns home disappointed. After a bit of stretching, the arrogant coach Pramod instructs all the girls to forget their previous diets and techniques. From the next day, Geeta starts learning new techniques, which completely changes her fighting style. Her biggest strength was attacking, but Pramod advises her to play defensively, as he thought it would be right for her. After coming to this academy, Geeta made many new friends here, but slowly her focus started to shift away from wrestling as she had started watching movies, eating unhealthy foods she had avoided until now. She was having a lot of fun at this time. On the other hand, her sister Babita was practicing rigorously. In fact, Geeta had even started growing her hair, which she had earlier cut short. One day, Geeta returns home with gifts for her sisters. Her hair had grown longer and her attitude had changed significantly, to the extent that she had forgotten her father's techniques after joining the academy. She was even beginning to believe that she had become a better wrestler than her father. The next day, Babita is training some girls from the village, but Geeta interrupts her and says, "This technique is completely wrong. My new coach has taught me a new technique." Just then, Mahavir arrives there and challenges Geeta, saying, "Let's see whose technique is wrong, my old-fashioned technique or your new-fashioned technique." A match ensues between the father and daughter that is difficult to watch, and in the end, Geeta defeats her father, proving that his old-fashioned technique has weakened. On the same day, as Geeta packs her belongings to return to the academy, her sister tells her, "Father's technique isn't wrong, he has just become weaker and older over time." The next day, Geeta leaves without talk with her father and sister. In the following scene, we see Geeta and the rest of her team traveling with their coach to Sydney to compete in their first World Championship. This match was going to be the most important in Geeta's life, as she had dreamed of it since childhood. However, in this match, Geeta perhaps performed her worst performance of her career. As a result, she lost the match, and on the other hand, Babita had prepared for the nationals and won a gold medal. Now, she too joins the Patiala Training Academy, following her sister's footsteps. Babita goes there with the mindset that before learning her coach's techniques, she will not forget her father's teachings. Despite seeing this, she was surprised that Geeta was so carefree after losing an international match yesterday. On the other hand, Geeta couldn't sleep the whole night after losing her first match in her village. A month later, Geeta loses yet another international match, and besides that, her performances in the Jakarta and Istanbul World Championships also remain disappointing. After a match, Pramod approaches Geeta and tells her, "Maybe Geeta, you're not built for international competitions." Following this, Geeta returns to India. When Geeta is completely shattered from within, she remembers one person, and that is her father. At this point, her sister Babita forces her to talk to their father. But when Geeta starts talking to her father, tears fill her eyes. She apologizes for her bad behavior towards her father. Even Mahavir is moved to tears upon hearing Geeta's voice. In the next 6 months, Geeta had 19 matches in the Commonwealth Games, where top players from around the world were coming to compete against her. For this, Mahavir decides that she should shift to Patiala for a few months to prepare. Upon reaching Patiala, she and Omkar rent a room near Geeta and Babita's training center. After that, both girls secretly go to their father for training before their academy's training sessions. But after training secretly with their father for some time, Pramod catches both of them. Following this, he complains to the head of the academy about Geeta and Babita. Subsequently, they decide to expel Geeta and Babita from the academy. However, Mahavir saves both girls by telling them that he won't help them from now on, and they will never return to his academy again. But after this, Mahavir starts helping his daughters by talking to them on the phone daily and pointing out their mistakes while watching recordings of their international matches. Due to this, Geeta even wins her trial match to enter the Commonwealth Games. Then, in the 2010 Commonwealth Games, Geeta's first match doesn't go well in the first round and she lost her first round. As the second round begins, Geeta appears weak initially, but her father encourages her from the stadium, saying, "You can't lose, Geeta." Motivated by his words, Geeta fights hard and eventually wins the second round. In the third round, Pramod advises Geeta to play defensively, but her father urges her to play aggressively. Keeping her father's strategy in mind, Geeta wins the third round and her first international match. After that, we are shown Geeta's semi-final match, which was against the ruthless Nigerian wrestler named Naomi. In the first round of this match, due to Naomi's aggressive mode, Geeta loses the first round. However, in the second round, Geeta counters Naomi's moves effectively and wins that round. But in the third round, the match ends in a draw between them. Following this, they have a toss, which Naomi wins, and she gains a grip on Geeta's right leg to control her. However, in the end, Geeta manages to break free from Naomi's grip and earns a point to win the match. After the match, during the press conference, Pramod was taking full credit for Geeta's victory, but Geeta, in front of the media, says, "If I made it to the finals today, it's solely because of my father." Hearing this, Pramod becomes quite angry and goes to the head of the academy with his request to ban Mahavir's entry even in the stadium. However, this time, the academy's head doesn't pay attention to Pramod's words. Now, Geeta's final match was with Australia's Angelina, who had defeated Geeta twice before. Before the match, Geeta's father Mahavir motivates her, saying that she isn't just fighting against Angelina in the final match, but also against those who believe that women cannot step outside the kitchen. Finally, the wait comes to an end, and the day of the finals arrives. Many people had gathered to watch Geeta's match. However, Pramod had hired a man to keep Mahavir away from Geeta. This man takes Mahavir with him, claiming that the chairman of the Wrestling Federation wants to meet him at this very moment. Eventually, he locks Mahavir in a room that was unbreakable and isolated from any human presence. On the other hand, without Mahavir's presence, Geeta's final match begins. Due to this, Geeta was quite troubled. In the first round, Geeta had taken a lead of 3 points against Angelina. However, in the second round, while Geeta was on the path to victory, she lost due to a counterattack by Angelina. At the start of the final round, within a few seconds, the match was slipping from Geeta's hand. Angelina had a lead of 4 points, and there were only 20 seconds left on the scoreboard. Just then, Geeta recalls her father's special technique of 5 points. She uses it and finally wins the gold medal, becoming the first Indian female wrestler to win a gold medal in an international match. However, her father's absence couldn't make this moment as special for her as it could have been. When the gold medal was placed around her neck, the Indian national anthem played. Upon hearing the anthem, even Mahavir, who was locked in the room, realized that Geeta had won the gold medal for India. Afterward, a janitor suddenly comes and opens the door, allowing Mahavir to rush in and embrace his daughter. At this moment, reporters also ignore Pramod and shift their focus to the father-daughter duo. After this, at the end of the movie, we are shown a picture of the real Fogat sisters. Here we come to know that 4 years later, in the 2014 Glasgow Commonwealth Games, Babita also won a gold medal. The flame that Mahavir Singh lit has now become a raging fire. His efforts have inspired thousands of girls across India to take up wrestling. With this, the movie concludes right here. To see more content